Nintendo.
It's for breakfast now.
Review attacks.
First the PacMan eats through a maze of dots, then the PacMan heads for the corner spot.
Remember the repetitive melodies of the Mario Brothers, the basic electronic sounds of Space Invaders, and the nostalgic dark tunes of Castlevania. The soundscapes of the arcade were usually accompanied by the screams of children having fun with their favorite games and pockets full of coins. If you missed out on the iconic games of the 80s, stick around as we explore the best 1980s video games that define the future of gaming.
My husband won't come home.
PacMan, I can help.
PacMan is one of the most popular arcade games ever made. The upbeat opening jingle followed by the waka waka sounds as characters traverse through the maze was an adrenaline booster for players. Kids would come alive as the game began, controlling PacMan through the maze and eating all the dots in his path, while avoiding those four ghosts, Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde, that hovered around. PacMan boosts its energy by eating at least one of the flashing dots, which turns the ghosts blue and weak, giving PacMan the ability to consume them. PacMan was developed in 1980 by Namco and initially called PacMan. This addictive arcade game kept kids away from their homes till late in the evening, and though the graphics were basic compared to today, PacMan was certainly a cultural phenomenon and continues to receive recognition.
The arcade sensation, and now you can play it at home.
Hang on, sweetheart. I'm gonna...
Everybody knows Donkey Kong, the game where a massive ape hurls barrels down a structure to stop a young man from saving a damsel in distress. Released by Nintendo in 1981, the game appears to be an extension of Mario, who features as the main character. The catchy background tunes reverberate at the start as players get ready to scale over barrels and climb ladders, and the legendary arcade game featured Mario as he attempts to save the princess, who's been captured by Donkey Kong, the ape that stands at the top of the platform. The game excels in terms of storytelling and mechanics for its time. The names Donkey Kong and Mario became two of the most famous characters of the century, and were even mentioned in mainstream entertainment such as movies. Donkey Kong has been remade in various versions and remains a staple in the nostalgic Nintendo world.
What it does is unleash a steady stream of alien forces who keep coming and coming, just like in the arcade, till
Space Invaders was one of the most popular games in the 80s, so popular that it caused a shortage of yen coins in Japan, as a good number of them were spent at the arcade. Released by Taito in 1978, it was a single-player game recognized by its pew-pew rapid-fire noises as the player shoots down rows of alien spaceships. The player controls a laser cannon that moves horizontally at the bottom of the screen, shooting rows of advancing ships before they reach the bottom. As the level increases, so does the pace, and players can hide behind shields while planning an attack, though one of the highlights of the game is the appearance of the distinctive mystery ship, which would fly across the screen and the player would try to destroy it for bonus points. This addictive game launched a new age of arcade games, popularizing the shooting genre while giving kids an activity to look forward to.
Mario, where are you?
It's Atari Mario.
Super Mario Bros. Is a game that has dominated arcades since 1985, and the game is set in a whimsical world where an Italian-American man named Mario and his brother Luigi set out on an adventure to save a princess. They're faced with enemies at every stage and have to skip, jump, and climb over obstacles while collecting objects like mushrooms, coins, fire flowers, and more. The player controls Mario, while double player mode allows a second to use Luigi, and they navigate treacherous lands to rescue Princess Peach from Bowser, the ultimate villain. Super Mario Bros. Is an iconic game and a household name that led to the development of various series and versions and became available on multiple consoles.
Game Boy comes complete with batteries and the outrageous new game Tetris, and for head-to-head
Even in today's lineup of extraordinary games, some of those simple 80s games still appeal to many players. especially those that love problem solving and logic. One such game is Tetris. Tetris is one of the oldest games that explores geometrics. Developed by a Soviet software engineer in 1984, the game ultimately involves arranging falling geometric shapes called tetrominoes into spaces where they fit perfectly to earn points. As the level increases, the speed of the shapes increase, making it difficult, and the goal is to prevent the blocks of shapes from stacking haphazardly on the top of the screen. Tetris achieved its initial global fame when it was included in the Nintendo Game Boy lineup in 1989, and ever since has been elevated to numerous platforms for its massive success and sales. Tetris has a strong community behind it and even has world competitions where champions from all over the planet come to compete to be the best. The game remains a timeless classic and is influential across cultures decades after its creation.
You play a medieval elf named Link.
You travel through many worlds, meeting endless characters on your eternal adventures.
Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda in 1986, a game that revolutionized open-world exploration and puzzle solving with its action-packed adventures developed in a rich fantasy world. The series became one of Nintendo's most successful franchises of the era, selling up to 125 million copies globally. The game introduced non-linear gameplay and other concepts like expansive sequences with hidden gems and secrets for players to find. The game itself revolves around the hero, Princess Zelda, and the overlord villain Ganon. It takes the hero through vast lands, intricate dungeons, and quests that require the hero to find items like the Master Sword, boomerangs, bombs, and other tools. Players are particularly blown away by the storytelling and the adventure.
The video game can't test your nerve like Galaxian, whose winged warships attack in wave after accelerating.
Galaga is a 1980s game that brought that out-of-the-world space experience to its players. Upon inserting the coin, the chime sound lets you know that you're in for a thrill. Developed by Namco in 1981, it advanced on the successes of Galaxian, which was released in 1979. Galaga is a fixed-shooter single-player game where players are tasked with destroying alien ships. You begin with 3 lives, and your objective is to recapture a spaceship that's been kept in captivity by the aliens. If you succeed in your mission, the recovered spacecraft merges with your original craft to increase the firepower. Galaga is widely successful, and the simple controls make it a game of precision and skill. Several sequels have come after the game, giving rise to a whole new generation of space attack games.
Arcade's the ultimate combat game. Each fighter has a different technique.
It didn't matter if you were born in the 1980s or not. If you're unfamiliar with the game Street Fighter, you've been living under a rock. Arcades came to life with the loud and aggressive sounds of Hadouken and the accompanying Shuriken when players played Street Fighter back-to-back. Street Fighter was first released by Capcom in 1987 and instantly gained massive success. When Street Fighter II dropped in 1991, it easily became the best fighting game ever made. With each installment in the series, new characters were introduced. The latest installment is Street Fighter VI, released in 2023, revealing new characters, advanced mechanics, and graphics, along with an improved storyline. Street Fighter still remains an all-time favorite in arcades today.
Screens, floating fruit, even pretzels.
Honey, don't you know?
Created as a follow-up to the original PacMan, Miss Pac-Man is a captivating game with improved gameplay and design, more sophisticated than Pac-Man itself. Released in 1982 by Midway, Miss Pac-Man became an instant success, earning its place as one of the best-selling games in history. The game is often credited with bringing more females to the world of arcade gaming and provides a simple gameplay with a female protagonist. Miss Pac-Man is undoubtedly better than its predecessor, offering a wide variety of mazes, more intense ghosts, and fast-paced gameplay that is a whole lot more challenging and entertaining for kids.
Challenge, ribbit, because the better you are, ribbit, ribbit, the harder Frogger is to play.
Frogger was originally developed by Konami and released by Sega in 1981. The game was fondly remembered for its addictiveness and thrill. You simply needed fast reflexes in order to survive. The objective was to guide a frog from one side of the road to the other, but the catch was you had to navigate through busy traffic and then hop across a river, jumping from one floating log to another until you got the frog to the end. Players had to avoid trucks, cars, and obstacles and make sure the frog didn't drown in the river. With each advanced level, the game got more difficult. It required precision and timing and was available in both the arcade and on consoles.
Destruction. Do battle or die. Metroid only from Nintendo.
Metroid was a dark sci-fi game, a lot different from the typical arcade game and took a while to find its audience, but later caught on and became one of the most fascinating games of the century. Metroid introduced a groundbreaking story and atmosphere that differentiated it from most games. One of the biggest surprises was featuring of a female protagonist in the storyline, which was revealed at the end. Although Metroid wasn't one of Nintendo's top sellers, it sold massively worldwide since being released in 1986. From the earliest release to the latest update, fans began to call it Metroidvania because of the similarity in mechanics between Metroid and Castlevania. It had a significant influence on other game designs, especially those that followed the style of exploration and adventure. Later entries such as Blind Forest and Hollow Knight took inspiration from Metroid. The darker tone and complexity of its environment made the game appealing to only a strong fan base, but certainly provided a challenge to true gamers.
He never made it past my intergalactic goon squad and diabolic arsenal.
If you ever played Contra, then you understand the well-deserved hype. Released in 1987 by Konami, the iconic action-packed military game was a huge hit with kids standing in line with a handful of coins just to get their hands on the controls. When it ported to home consoles, game night at a friend's house was usually a blast to those who owned it and would receive stayover visitors more often than they would like. The fast-paced co-op mode made some pretty legendary difficulty levels that made it ever so addictive. Contra gained massive fans when it launched in the 80s and stood out with its sci-fi military-style combo inspired by the movies Alien and Rambo. The home console sold millions of copies and went on to spawn spin-offs across various platforms like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The two-player feature allowed friends to go into battle together, destroying and wreaking havoc on their enemies. Retro gamers will always appreciate the originality and challenge of one of the most influential games of the 80s.
And become the vengeful ancient ghost pirate, or the son.
Remember the gothic horror themes of the masterful classic Castlevania? This epic Nintendo Entertainment System game was released by Konami and quickly became a successful franchise with action-packed gameplay, an interesting storyline, and high levels of difficulty that challenged even the best of gamers. Castlevania took us back centuries to a time when vampires were on a rampage. The player is introduced to the Belmont family, specifically Simon Belmont, who's a vampire hunter on a mission to defeat Dracula and his cronies. Kids were thrilled with the mysterious symphony of the game. The non-linear exploration further deepened its appeal. With each new installment, the storyline became more complex, introducing new features, mechanics, and progressive power-ups. Castlevania was a different type of game and gathered a loyal fan base, selling over 20 million units worldwide.
Free blip is this shit.
Watch this, I got this guy.
On a body snatching trip.
How about those eardrum-splitting missile sounds of the 1981 game Defender? This jet-fighting, action-packed arcade game is legendary amongst similar games with planetary landscapes. Defender was launched by Eugene Jarvis in the 1980s and ever since has sold millions of copies. The game is designed as a side-scrolling, fast-paced gameplay where players control a spacecraft over a wide planetary space. Alien crafts try to destroy or abduct the human ship while the player defends it from the invaders. Following the success of the game, Defender was ported to home consoles including versions of Atari, Intellivision, and the Commodore. Defender remains one of the most successful games of its era, generating over $100 million in arcade revenue.
But anyway, the brake pedal is super important in this game, and what's unique about Outrun is that it's all about...
If you're a lover of reckless speed and car racing, then Outrun was the perfect 80s game for you. The classic game became a huge commercial success in arcades. Designed in 1986, Outrun is popular for its vibrant graphics, curvy tracks, and the iconic Ferrari Testarossa. The game focuses on free-form driving, displaying various scenic paths at various times of the day, with its unforgettable soundtrack that lit up the mood. Kids would compete to beat the highest record, and those who could get their initials on the board were looked at like rock stars. One feature that made Outrun unique is its branching paths, allowing players to either turn left or right, leading to different destinations while improving the visual experience. Players ultimately end up at a different location depending on what path they choose earlier in the game. Home consoles made it more popular, and today there are way more advanced car racing games with incredible CGI, but we'll always remember the legacy of Outrun as one of the most influential games of its time.
Tyson's Punch-Out!
Boxing fans are not left out, as the game Punch-Out brought some hard-hitting action to the arcade. The game was first released in 1984 by Nintendo, however it began to really make waves when it was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987. Those who owned an NES became the coolest kids in school, as they quickly mastered the game and bragged about their killer left hook. The design enabled players to control the fighter while clearly seeing the move of their opponents. Punch-Out was unusual because of its double screen, the top displaying the stats while the bottom showed the gameplay. This was different from conventional games and made the game stand out. The game partnered with Mike Tyson in his prime, using him as the final boss in the ring and earning the game its iconic name of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Nintendo signed a 3-year deal with the pro boxer to keep his character. This obviously appealed to the players and helped to boost sales. The franchise remains a benchmark for all boxing games, as fans still reference this classic.
Double Dragon, the greatest martial arts video game legend ever.
All fans of Street Fighter also got their money's worth from playing Double Dragon. Double Dragon was released in 1987 by Technos Japan, and the game took side-scrolling co-op fighting to a whole new level, becoming a huge hit both in the arcade and on the home console. Inspired by street martial arts, the story involved twin brothers Jimmy and Billy Lee, who were on a mission to save a kidnapped girlfriend. The storyline ultimately captured the gaming world, especially because of its 2-player co-op mode, which allowed players to team up and fight off the bad guys to save the damsel in distress. Double Dragon performed well in the US and Japan at that time and led to high demand for home consoles. Newer releases introduced better graphics, more characters, and improved mechanics, and the game featured numerous spin-offs, even inspiring live-action film in 1994. Double Dragon remains one of the best combat games of the 1980s.
When you shoot the light-sensing zapper, when you play the system with so many...
Now some lighthearted fun for those who want a simple and relaxing game without all the fuss. Duck Hunt is one of the most iconic NES games of the 80s. Released in 1984, it became a household name in the genre of light gun shooter. It was usually played with the NES Zapper, a simple light gun which allowed players to target and shoot at ducks. It's always hunting season in Duck Hunt, and players compete either in single or double mode. If you happen to be a bird rights activist, the game had clay shooting mode, which allowed you to shoot at clay pigeons rather than the flighty real ones. The player shoots at a duck, and if they miss, their companion dog would laugh hysterically, but if they scored, the dog runs to collect the prize. Duck Hunt is a fun classic that appeals to both young and older audiences alike. Final Fight is a classic beat-em-up game with incredible action and graphics for its time. Developed by Capcom in 1989, it paved the way for other side-scrolling combat games. Players found themselves in the dangerous streets of the fictional Metro and had to fight their way through the infamous Mad Gear Gang to rescue the mayor's daughter. Players had 3 options for the main character: Hagar the muscular wrestler, Cody the street fighting expert, and Guy, Cody's best friend, who also happened to be a ninja. The gameplay was simple. You side-scrolled while beating up whoever was in your path. It's a mixture of kicks, punches, grapples, and good old weapon slinging, and while the single mode was fun, nothing beat 2-player mode for a tag team beatdown.
Fight your way through 8 stages of play as you attempt to defeat.
The 8-bit era had some really cool games, and one of the most impressive was Mega Man 2. It was developed and published by Capcom in 1988 in Japan and hit North America and Europe a year later. It was originally for the NES and displayed exceptional storytelling. Players had to battle through different levels to defeat robot masters created by the overlord Dr. Wily, who was on a quest to take over the world. Mega Man had to defeat each robot master and acquire their weapon or ability if he was to stand a chance against the Doctor. The second installment was an improvement on the original. The smoother gameplay and better graphics, Mega Man 2 got pretty good stats with commercial success, solidifying the franchise as one of the tops of the 8-bit era. Which of these games from the past was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more great memories in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.